Ms. Arias, why don't you take the stand, please? Okay. Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have any of you seen any coverage of this case in the media? Did you hear anything, see anything? Did anyone speak to you about this case whatsoever? I see no hands. Mr. Nurmi, you may continue with direct examination. Ms. Arias, you are still under oath. Do you understand?
Good morning, Ms. Arias.
Good morning.
Before we talk about the break-in at your grandparents' home, I just want to go over a few more text messages this morning. In that regard, I want to talk about a text message conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on February 25th. Your Honor, if I may approach. Do you recognize those
Yes.
text messages? Okay. Based on your review of those, were you planning on spending time with Mr. Alexander that day?
Yes, that's after I was driving back from visiting with Gus Searcy. I was going to meet with Travis. Sustained, rephrase.
Was it your plan, based on what you saw in those text messages, was it your plan to spend time with Mr. Alexander that day?
Yes.
And was it your plan, or were you anticipating that sexual activity would be a part of what was to take place when you met Mr. Alexander that day?
Yes.
And do you remember when these text messages took place?
It was late February. I think that said the 25th.
Okay.
But it depends on the time. It's 7 hours ahead.
And where were you?
On the road.
Okay. On the road near where?
Maybe somewhere around the Hoover Dam, I think.
Okay. I'm going to move for the admission of Exhibit 442.
No objection.
442 is admitted.
Now, on that day, you reference a message, the second message down. You talk about a schoolgirl outfit, and then you reference the Spider-Man undies. Was that a reference to the underwear you received for Valentine's Day?
Yes.
Looking at the prior message, was it Mr. Alexander's preference that your vagina be hairless?
Yes.
Did he ever explain why?
He just said he doesn't like hair.
Okay. The next conversation I want to show you is exhibit for the record 443. That was a text conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on March 30th, if I may approach. Take a look at that, Ms. Arias, and see if you recognize that.
Yes.
And when did that text conversation begin on the 30th, and when did it end?
It began on, it says 1650.
Objection. She's testifying from item, not evidence. If she can tell us after looking at that, but not from the item.
Sustained.
In terms of date and time, Ms. Arias, do you remember when that conversation ended?
Ended?
Yes.
It ended on the same day, which would be the 30th, at, it would be 10:38, even though it says 17:38. It's Greenwich time here. But
Do you remember where you were when you were having this text conversation?
no, I don't remember. I was probably at my house. I was in Mesa, I know that.
Okay.
I hadn't moved yet.
You spoke the other day of a conversation where you hung up on Mr. Alexander. Is this a discussion about that conversation?
Yes.
And refresh our memories. It's been a few days. Why did you hang up on him?
He was swearing at me.
Your Honor, I'm going to move that Exhibit 443 be moved into evidence.
Objection. Hearsay.
Approach, please.
Arias, if you could just read Exhibit 443 to yourself for us for a moment.
Okay.
Ms. Arias, during that string of text messages, do you see where you apologize to Mr. Alexander and tell him to have a great day?
Yes. Yes.
Why do you do that?
I just wanted to end this thing going back and forth, and I said just tried to sign off, kind of.
And the confrontation?
Yes.
How did this confrontation affect you?
It makes me, well, like I said, whenever he would get angry, I started shaking again. So it would bother me in that regard. And it was like, whenever he got mad, it was like being in an earthquake. Like it starts and you don't know how long it's going to last or how bad it's going to get until it's all done. So I just didn't want it to get as bad as some of our arguments and fights have gotten in the past. Even though we were 1,000 miles apart, it's still, his words are worse sometimes, usually.
Ms. Arias, could you take a look at the back? What exhibit number is that?
443.
Judge, at this time I'm going to move to admit Exhibit 443.
Same objection, hearsay.
Let's sustain the objection without more foundation.
You said even though you were 1,000 miles away, it still affected you, right?
Yes.
Were you afraid?
Yes, I was afraid, not for my physical safety, but just afraid of, intimidated by him.
What were you afraid of?
I was afraid that he would get angrier and maybe that he would continue to swear at me in the text messages, or that he would just start calling me names again, or I don't know. When he got angry, it just kept on and on and on until he was done blowing off all his steam.
Is there a way for you to describe for us how that affected you so deeply?
It was just, I felt bullied, like it was just miserable because, I don't know, I didn't stop talking to him, but we would talk and then he would be nice and then he would be mean and then he would be nice and then he would be mean. It was just, I don't know, it just really affected me. I can't really describe it.
Was there anything about what he said in these text conversations that affected you that day?
This one particular?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Just yes or no? Yes?
Yes.
Again, Your Honor, I'm going to move to enter in Exhibit 443.
Again, lack of foundation and hearsay.
Approach, please. He is admitted.
Ms. Arias, if you'd be so kind as to take a look at Exhibit 443. Look at the bottom of page 72. At text message 4569, where you say, "I'm sorry, have a great day." That's what
Yes.
we're referring to a moment ago?
Yes.
Okay. And based on what you told us, it was your hope that this would lead to an end in the confrontation, and it did it?
Not right away, no.
Okay. And as it relates to the exhibits, the outgoing, based on what you testified to earlier, the outgoing messages, the outgoing messages relate to what he says to you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you could begin reading what he said to you on page 73, that being text message 11857.
Read it.
Yes, please.
You stressing me out on a daily basis is getting really freaking old. You cry over everything and you dump countless bull crap on me. I wasn't appreciative of another thing to deal with because of you. It's easy crap to fix, but you like to ruin every day of mine, and I'm tired of it. You texting about something time sensitive is just a way to reel me back into the bull crap. Otherwise, you would have just told me. I'm sick of your soap opera and your ways. You purposely try to ruin every day. It seems you're getting good at it.
How do you respond?
Read my response?
Yes.
I'm just as tired of your hateful words. Do you think it's a day in the park for me when you're mean? I was just bragging to a girlfriend about how awesome and cool you are.
What does he say in response?
If you're tired of me, leave me alone.
And your response?
Whatever, Travis.
Do you say more than whatever, Travis?
Yes.
What else do you say?
I hope you realize you got upset over nothing. I was just telling you about one thing. I was still half asleep, and the next thing I knew, you were raising your voice and swearing. If I had been more coherent, then maybe I wouldn't have hung up on you. I hate that you're right. Maybe I would have made a better decision. But I've already apologized twice, and you not once. You're just choosing to be stubborn and remain pissed off.
Does he respond to that?
Yes.
Do me a favor, then take a look at text message number 11859. I believe that's on the last page of the exhibit. Tell us how he responds.
I don't ever want to get another freaking text from you again or a call unless it's an apology and a thank you for constantly having to take on your never-ceasing problems, not one freaking more.
And that was on March 30th of 2008, correct?
Yes.
After March 30th of 2008, do you speak or text with him again?
Yes.
When?
Later that day, or maybe shortly thereafter, a couple hours.
And was there any discussion about this fight?
I don't think we discussed the details anymore. It was just apologies.
Okay. Now I want to talk to you about a text message conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on the 7th of April, 2008, all right?
Okay.
And this would have been after you had moved away from Mesa, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I was still on the road on that date.
Okay. And that was the night you were in Hollister spending the night with your sister. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. If I may approach, Your Honor. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 444. If you could be so kind, Miss Arias, as to review this exhibit. Read it to yourself.
Yes.
You recognize the conversation?
I do, but it was actually on the 6th that it took place.
Okay. So the difference being the difference in time that we talked about previously with text messages?
Yeah, they're 7 hours ahead.
Your Honor, I'm going to move to have Exhibit 442 moved into evidence.
Objection, hearsay relevance.
Counsel, why don't you approach? Ms. Arias, I'm going to ask that you move your microphone to your right. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, Ms. Arias, what I'm showing you is Exhibit 442. Let's talk a little bit about...
Excuse me, Mr. Nermi, I think it's 444. Would you look at that document?
Yes, 444.
My apologies, Your Honor. Let's take a look at, I want to talk a little bit about the circumstances, things that were going on the 6th, without telling us what was said in these text messages. If you could review them and just tell us what was going on between yourself and Mr. Alexander, looking at the text messages, referring specifically to the text messages on page 77.
I was on the road after leaving Mesa with my U-Haul truck. He wanted to know where I was and how far that was from Wairika. I let him know.
You were moving, what you told us earlier, you were moving to get away from him, right?
Yes, that was one of the main reasons.
And he contacts you the same day, and this is the day that he flipped you off as you were driving away. Is that correct, what you told us earlier?
I think it was the next day. I think I slept in the truck one of those nights.
Okay. And then looking at this exhibit, there appears to be a gap in time between message 12295 and message 12308. Can you explain that gap in time for us?
Yeah, it looks like it's 2 hours and 18 minutes, if I did my math right.
Were you just driving and not responding, or sleeping, or what
No,
was going on?
I was at my sister's house already. We had texted, kind of said goodnight sort of thing, and I went to sleep.
Okay. And you woke up then to text message 12308?
Yes, it came through broken up in many text messages. It was really long.
So was your phone not on silent, or did this message actually wake you up, or did you wake up and check your phone?
It woke me up because it kept beeping because so many kept coming through. It wasn't on silent.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm going to move to Exhibit 444.
Counsel, please approach.
Ms. Arias, drawing your attention back to this gap in time between text message 12295 and text message 12308. You mentioned you were at your sister's house and then you went to sleep, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just to clarify then, you didn't have any conversations with Mr. Alexander, be it through instant messages or telephone, between these text messages. Is that correct?
Definitely not through instant message, and I'm pretty sure we didn't have any phone calls between that time.
Okay. So you're spending time with your sister, and you woke up to text message 12308. Is that right?
Yes, I was staying in a separate bedroom and I had gone to sleep by then.
Judge, I'm going to again move to admit Exhibit 444.
Exhibit 444 is admitted.
I want to discuss now with you the text message that you woke up to when you were in Hollister with your sister. Had you told Mr. Alexander you were moving away to try to get him out of your life?
No, I wouldn't have told him that.
Why not?
Well, I told him that we should need to spend more time apart, but not to get him out of my life.
Okay. But that's what you wanted.
Not to get him out of my life. I wanted us to be able to have a healthy friendship.
And again, just so it doesn't show up here, we're talking about April, at this time then we're talking about April 7th, or early morning hours?
It would have been the 6th, 4, 3, 2, 1, 12, like I think 10 or 11 at night.
Okay. So you woke up to this message. Says, do not call me, do not text me anything. And is this, there's reference to Michelle K. Is that the fight you talked about earlier? He was mad that somebody was saying something about him or outing him as dating other women. Is that correct?
Yeah, her name was Maria, not Michelle. She mentioned he had been dating Lisa.
He says, after tomorrow, it's going to be really bad for you. Let me get in here. He says, after tomorrow, it's going to be really bad for you. Time to spit it out. What was he referencing?
He wanted to know who Marie was. I didn't know who she was. She came into my work. I worked at Ruby Tuesdays. She was sitting in another person's section, and I brought her some food, and she recognized me. So there was no way I could find out who she was. She was there and gone. We didn't get into details about his life like he had thought. He just mentioned, oh yeah, Travis had dated Lisa, which brought up the conversation. And so that's what he wanted me to spit out was, who is Marie, basically.
And when he said it was going to get real bad for you, what is the context of that? Was there something behind that threat?
I imagine there was, but I couldn't imagine what it was. But I didn't know what he was capable of, so that bothered me, it worried me.
He says, I promise you the punishment will be better than the lie. To your understanding, what did he mean by that?
I don't know. He just...
Objection, speculation.
Had he threatened to do something to you outside of this conversation?
Not up to this point, he hadn't.
Okay.
So I didn't know what he was talking about.
I want to talk to you now about a text message conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on April 8th, 2008. And I want to hand you what's been marked Exhibit 445. You can just review that to yourself, please. Have you read them all?
Yes, I've read them.
Do you recognize them?
Yes.
Without telling us exactly what was said, what was the context of the conversation on April 18th?
I had left town, obviously. I think I was just back in Wairika, and he discovered that I left a drawing behind that he gave me, and it really made him mad. It was just something I forgot as I was moving, and it upset him.
And this is what we talked about last week, this drawing that he had signed?
Yes.
And in terms of his, you talked about the conversation. What effect did the anger that he displayed during this text conversation, what did it have on you? Did it have that same shaking effect we've been talking about?
Yeah, it did. I just wanted to get him calmed down and explain to him that that wasn't intentional, that it was an accident that I forgot.
I'm going to move Exhibit 445 be admitted into evidence.
I don't have any objection to, if the foundation that we talked about is there, I don't have any objection to the majority of it. However, the end portion of the text message talks about Sedona and...
Judge, if we're going to have this complex a discussion, we should have it at bench.
Right.
Ms. Arias, do us a favor and let me draw your attention to page 79 of that exhibit, or what is denoted as 79 of 132. And drawing your attention again to 12332. And you're having the discussion about this signed item. Could you tell us what he says to you in text message 12332?
He says, "Do not call back." It's a typo, I think. "I'm sick of you playing stupid and dealing with childish tactics."
And do you respond to that before he texts you again?
No, it doesn't. Well, I might have been typing a response, but another response or another text message came through before I could respond.
What was the next message you received from him? Could you read that to us?
Yes. "It was some stupid-ass way of ruining yet another of mine, which you have done so much of. Bitter feelings are brewing in me towards you. I'm sick of having days ruined by you. If it keeps up, I fear I will have a genuine dislike for you. I'm asking you before it gets to that to stop doing it, before I start seeking revenge. Your account with me is overdrawn. P.S. You need to start paying me back, so you better start looking for a job."
And paying you back, is that a reference to the BMW?
Yes.
Okay. Drawing your attention to text message 5044, your response was to apologize to him, is that right?
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, if drawing your attention to page 80 is you apologize again and tell him, "Don't worry, be happy." Is that right?
It's one text message broken up 3 times, and it looks like it was sent twice.
Okay.
Probably an accident.
But that was the substance of one of the things you said to him, right?
Yes.
Okay. Drawing your attention to page 81 of 132 in this exhibit, text message 12335. After you apologize, this text message came after you apologized to him, is that correct?
Yes.
Could you read that for us?
"It's just always something, Jodi. It just gets old. If it was hard for you to take because of sentimental reasons, you shouldn't have asked me to sign it and then made me sign it in ink right away. To leave it after all that was rude and inconsiderate to me, which has been a common trend from you lately. You say you meant to get it, but even if that's true, you put it there so you could leave it and knew it would upset me, but you simply don't care. Just like wasting an entire week of my life sending me on a wild goose chase based on a lie. You just didn't care to be considerate on how all that affects me. I'm trying to save my house, build a business amidst so much conflict, and you don't care about anything that doesn't involve you. It's very upsetting, and I'm tired of it. I don't want to deal with anything big or little that is some stupid ploy. You're not sorry. If you were, you wouldn't continue onward with this stuff. I'm just asking you to think of me. If you would have thought of me for 1 second, you wouldn't have left that there. Imagine if I did that to you with something you gave me. You'd cry for weeks. Just give me a pardon from any madness. I don't need it. It wearing me out, and if it continues, just like I have to give you motivation to tell me the truth, I'll give you motivation to quit screwing with me."
And do you know what that motivation was?
I don't. I mean,
Okay.
I probably imagine the worst.
How did you respond, going back to the next page? There are, referring you to text message 5053, 5054, 5055, and 5057. Could you read those for us? I know that they are Could you read it to us in the order which you typed them? I know they didn't come in that way, but if you could just read it in the order you typed them.
Yeah, the first three you mentioned is, there are only 3 of 4 that showed up. The second one never came through, so it'll be broken up. Never to deliberately upset you, hun. Sorry again. I was just confused in so many ways. I feel like since I left AZ, a fog has lifted and things seem so much. The next message is missing and it goes on to 3. Both have a lot to recover from, but also a lot to be happy about and thankful for. I love you. Things are only getting better now. I know it. I haven't felt this good in so long. I almost forgot what it was like.
What do you mean when you said you hadn't felt this good in so long? What was that a reference to?
I just felt more like I was like my old self again when I got back to Wairika, and like I was just living in this fog, this almost like a suicidal fog the whole time I was in Arizona, and it was almost like getting oxygen to get out of there.
Did these conversations you had with Mr. Alexander, did they draw you back into that fog?
Yes.
Looking at text message 5060 on that same page, there's a reference to a phone call. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
You say thank you for calling and say that was very nice of you. This phone call then, was Mr. Alexander once again apologetic?
Yes, he was apologetic. I mean, he felt justified, but he was apologetic, and he was nicer. I forgot to read one of the text messages that you asked me to read.
Which one was that?
5057.
Okay, go ahead and read that for us.
It just says, now that that's all behind us, let us just chalk it up to that chalk up that drawing to one last ditzy thing. I honestly forgot to grab it after I put it there. I think it's the second part of the text message didn't come through.
Okay. So just to clarify then, what you're saying here and what your testimony is that you didn't not bring this item with you, this signed item with you, out of some evil intent to ruin Mr. Alexander's day. Is that right?
Objection, text and answer given speaks for itself. Leading.
Sustained.
Did you forget this drawing out of a desire to ruin Mr. Alexander's day?
No.
As a matter of fact, you didn't want to do anything that would incur his anger at all, did you?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Did you want Mr. Alexander to be angry with you?
No, never.
Because you'd start shaking if he did, didn't you?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Would you start shaking if he got mad at you?
Yeah, it depended on his fury and his wrath.
When he swore at you?
Yes.
When he called you a whore?
Yes.
A slut?
Yes.
That made you shake. You were scared, right?
Objection, leading.
Were you scared?
Yes.
Did you like it when he called you a three-hole wonder?
No.
Let's talk about a conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on the 19th of April 2008 that has been marked Exhibit 446. And if you could just do us a favor and read that to yourself.
Yes.
Do you remember let me ask you this first. What was the subject matter of this text conversation?
I was telling him a story on the phone, and he asked me to get to the point, and I think my feelings were hurt, so I said something to the effect of, like, I always listen to him when he wants to tell a story, even if it goes a long time.
And was that well received by him?
No.
And you were living in Wairika at the time of these text messages?
Yes.
His anger still affected you then on April 19th, 2008?
Sustained.
Did his anger still affect you on April 19th, 2008?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to move to admit Exhibit 446.